It is a pleasure to be here tonight to talk to you about a subject that really means a lot to me, and that's restoring the whole idea of decency and civility in our public communications, and what is the role of the media in that. I'm going to be addressing what I consider to be a pattern of trends that affect the quality of our lives and the very fabric of our society. So, what do I mean by that? Well, it's the connection between media, technology, algorithms, and how it impacts how we talk to each other, online and elsewhere. As you know, there's been an alarming escalation of offensive conduct, offensive language in the online world. We've all seen that. I don't need to convince you of that. And I think it's time to take a measure of where we're at, what we can do about it, before it's too late. My comments here tonight are not meant to be high-handed or preachy or self-righteous. I don't know any more than you do. But I do care. I've lived in media. I've been involved in media much of my career. And I'm still fascinated by media. I think that it's an extraordinary invention. Most of us, I think, have contributed to this situation, consciously or unconsciously, directly or indirectly by our everyday actions. And there's ample evidence of the kind of disrespectful behavior that we all can share. I won't run you through it right now. There's something about this guy. He passed away 70 years ago, Albert Einstein. And what he said was quite compelling, that it was appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. Now, that was at the dawn of the nuclear age. Wouldn't you like to know what Albert Einstein would say today? I would. But I'd like to know what you say and what we say about what we can do about this. Can we restore civility and kindness in our communications? I think we can. So let's talk about that. How did we get here? How did we come to normalize language and conduct that most of us know goes against every grain of what we were taught as kids growing up? How did we normalize that? How do we think that this is okay? I'll leave the psychological assessments to the experts. I'm not one. And I'll focus my comments on what I believe is perhaps the central role of media. Communication is essential to the human condition. We exist by it, we thrive by it, and we've been doing it forever. Arguably, the first kind of media was in the form of handwritten newsletters that were distributed on a very small scale. They were replaced by the technological disruption that occurred with Gutenberg's printing press, and suddenly we had newspapers. But even they were limited to only the elite and in very local, very, very confined areas. But technology disrupted again when wire, cables, transatlantic cable, and the telegraph was invented so that we could take information and distribute it over large territories and large, expansive geographies. Radio and television dominated the 20th century. And then in the last part of the 20th century, boom, the internet came upon us. And don't get me wrong, I think the internet is an extraordinary development. It has allowed us to communicate between each other, to access information that was literally inaccessible, and change the way we do business in so many ways. When you say the businesses that have changed, it's just amazing. But there's also a dark side, and that's what I think we need to pay a little bit of attention to. The internet became ubiquitous with smartphones and mobile apps, and out of that generation came social media. And social media changed everything, because suddenly we, the audience, we, the users, were given the opportunity to become the media, because we generate content. We share the content of others, and we do so quite freely. So suddenly we all became publishers and distributors of content, information, and we still do. So we have a responsibility. Let's not just go pointing fingers here. A guy by the name of Joey Ito, who was the MIT Media Lab director, wrote this wonderful definition of the current times. He said, "We live in a time where widely accessible technology, extraordinarily cheap, is exponentially disrupting our modern lives, while billions of people have access to each other by a click, a post, instantaneously. That's pretty strong. And in this social media environment, it's all about monetizing attention. So let me tell you about that. Social media, you know it. And I don't go through all the list of them, and they do what they do. They basically live on clicks, views, and revenue. Social media updated Benjamin Day's 1830 concept of a newspaper by taking what was done in 1830, which was to expand it and democratize it by lowering the price and introducing advertising, but by bringing in sensational content. The internet applied that large scale to all this computer network. And they took sensational content and they expanded on it. The more provocative, the more likely it'll be shared, the more likely it'll be monetized, and the more revenue to be gained. And we're talking about content that stirs emotions, content that stirs fear, anger, outrage, content that maximizes engagement through the very powerful algorithms that drive these social media platforms. And these are very carefully calculated strategies to retain your attention. Let's not forget, in Canada today, according to Statistics Canada, 87% of Canadians use social media. 60% say they use it for news. Tim Wu, who happens to be a Canadian, who's a teacher at Columbia, a law teacher, wrote a book 2 years ago, I think, called The Attention Merchants. Attention Merchants. The title tells everything. But he says in this book, the world of social media and the world of current media basically comes down to harvesting human attention and reselling it to advertisers. Think about that. So what does, in this world of misinformation and disinformation, what does this all create? What does this generate? If provocative, sensational content in the form of disinformation and misinformation sells because we're brought into it by these algorithms, and because it's more effective to watch something that is provocative than to watch nuanced reporting, what is it doing to us? What are the implications? It's threatening democracy, in my view. It's polarizing us. It's manipulating public opinion. It reduces civic engagement. It's a threat to national security. We've seen that through bad actors who play on election processes. And the people, we people, are increasingly divided, some along ideological lines, some along the lines of false narratives, some along the lines of conspiracies, and others along the lines of hate-induced fear. From vaccines to climate change, it's all out there for you. The disinformation, information content spreads not only online, but out of line. Talk to school teachers. Talk to people who referee amateur sports. Ask them how it is. There's a report recently from the Ontario Federation of High School Teachers that says that 75% say they have been victims of acts of intimidation. What's that? So let's stop for a moment and say, well, okay. And I've asked myself this question, and I don't like the answer. Maybe your answer will be better. But when I ask myself the question, how many times have I turned a blind eye to a situation where a colleague or a friend was mistreated and I did nothing? I can think of some. How many times did I not intervene and say something constructively, helpfully, to a child who might have bullied another child that I saw? I said nothing. How many times have we done that? I think it's time that we need to lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg said, the former president and CEO of Facebook. Yes, we need to lean in. We need to lean in to do our part, to move from a culture of abuse to a culture of respect. And now let's talk about public officials. In these tumultuous times, we cannot ignore the impact that this kind of behavior is having on our publicly elected officials, because people are walking away from public office, saying, not for me. At all levels of government, federal, provincial, municipal, school boards, it's there. Think of Catherine McKenna, the former Minister of Environment. The harassment was so repeated and so relentless, the RCMP had to put a full-time detail on her family to protect her. That's crazy. What about in Saint-Paul-de-Montmagny? Did you see the report in September? The mayor was driving through his town of 800 people, and somebody, an irate citizen, hurled a brick through his windshield. He wasn't happy about something that happened at City Hall. Regrettably, the behavior that I'm describing is not stopping. It seems to continue. It's in our legislatures, it's in our town halls, it's in our supermarkets, it's in our hockey arenas. L'Association des municipalités du Québec says that 42% of elected officials have lived through intimidation and threatening circumstances. L'Institut de Recherche de Politique Publique says that 70% of Canadians believe that people aren't running for public office because of the public harassment that they receive. So where do we go from here? We need to restore civility, kindness, and decency in the way we communicate with each other. We need to assume personal responsibility for it because we are part of the problem. We are media. We are engaging in it directly, indirectly, consciously, and unconsciously. So let's stop wringing our hands and pointing at others or trying to find others to blame and assume that we can contribute to the solution. Not alone. Nobody's saying that. But if we lean in and put our shoulder to the wheel, we can move this. We can make it better. It begins with engaging in good faith, not behind the veil of anonymity. It begins with respecting the opinions of others, by empathy. There's a professor at Des Hôtels at McGill here, Anita Nowak, who writes extensively on this. And there are others. There are things that we can learn, we can do, and effectively do. We need strategies that address the young. And there's good news here. Basically, all the universities in Quebec that I looked at, and most in Canada, so UQAM, Laval, Sherbrooke, Concordia, McGill, all have action plans. And that's a good start to move on this at some level or another, but it's not enough. We need to do more. In fact, we need to do more across our entire education system with media literacy and critical thinking at the top of the list of things that we're teaching our young, to give them the tools and the ability to deal with this. We may need to make restoring civility election issues. There will be federal elections, there will be provincial elections. So why don't we ask those people who are looking for our support, what are you going to do to help us restore? We're not putting it on your plate, we're in this together, but what are you going to do? What are your thoughts, what are your ideas about how to move this forward, to fix this? And again, I say the internet has a lot of good things in it, a lot of great advantages, but we need to address this, and it begins with us. We must take this on. So I leave you with this thought. Marianne Rodmacher said, courage, it doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is that quiet voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. I invite you to join me. Let's try again tomorrow. Thank you very, very much.